In this presentation, I will highlight a proposed framework for practice in working with children and youth. The key principles which underpin working with the young people and children will be given an in-depth discussion through providing a critical analysis and discussing the outcomes of the framework. This framework is represented by a diagram with overlapping key principles and approaches, namely child-centered approach, engagement principles, trauma-informed practice, playwork principles, and strengths-based approach. These components are all inclusive under the holistic development framework, which constitutes the core standards in working with the young people and children. The child-centered concept is an important principle in the contemporary child welfare and protection that has emerged internationally. The principle grounded in this approach was pioneered by the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, which provides a child-centered framework within which services to children are located. As children are defined as individuals, the child-centered practice related to the different strands of children's rights in the UNCRC is to provide, protect, and participate. Harris' 2011 views that the child-centered principle is understanding the child's lived experience and consulting with the child to identify ways of improving life in order to ensure that their needs are met. The child-centered approach has emerged more and more to the center of attention in child welfare. The principles of engagement believe that children are defined as individuals. Understanding can occur in cooperation through partnership, meaning that complete understanding is impossible without involving the child. For human service workers who work with child protection and safety, one of the central principles of assessment is partnership with the child. A number of authors have stressed the significant shift in the relationship between state agencies and families, with families increasingly being considered as partners in decision-making in child welfare practice. The principle of child and youth involvement is that it is logical in theory and generally self-evident. It is nevertheless more difficult to apply in practice than one would suppose. Moreover, engaging with young people is ensuring a continuous involvement in the structure and decision-making process of the government. Youth engagement means that policy decisions, programs, and services delivered to them are appropriate, relevant, supported, and responsive to their needs. The conceptualizing of children and young people in out-of-home care as having experienced complex trauma is supported by decades of international research and clinical observation. Workers must identify the strengths for all children. Competency must be promoted. Capacity for mastery must be built for all children, and that children must receive assistance to achieve success. In applying trauma-informed care to young people and children, it requires consideration of their environment beyond the immediate service being provided. Trauma-informed health and welfare settings and systems could sometimes contrast dramatically with traditional settings and systems as they require different ways of operating, and without this understanding, the risk of re-traumatizing the children may occur. Thus, workers must always adhere to the primary goal of care, which are non-maleficence and beneficence. The fourth principle highlighted in the holistic development framework is playwork. According to the principle of Article 31 of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, gives all children the right to rest and leisure, to engage in play and recreational activities appropriate to the age of the child, to participate freely in cultural life and the arts. It is essential that children's play is freely chosen, directed and intrinsically motivated behavior that actively engages the child. Playwork principles assert that good play opportunities are essential to children's holistic development. It provides enriching experiences that can help develop children's emotional and social skills. Research highlights the importance of children being able to learn about risks and using their own initiative. Play is essential for children to have the opportunities to practice making and consolidating friendships and to deal with conflict. Here are some outcomes for the playwork principle. There is a wealth of evidence to prove both the positive impact of play and the negative impact of play deprivation on child development. The positive impacts include physical, emotional, social, cognitive, creativity, and communication skills in children. The fifth element of this framework is the strengths-based approach. This approach in working with youth and children is focused on identifying the strengths or assets as well as the needs and difficulties of children, young people, and their families. The strengths-based approach is also grounded to a rights-based and person-centered and has a clear ethical values-based position. The strengths-based practice also puts individuals, especially children and young people, families and communities at the heart of social care and recognizes that they have a key role to play in the care of children and young people, which cannot be replaced by professional intervention. The literature has identified an association between personal strengths in young people and academic success, self-determination, and life satisfaction. Studies have found that the use of strengths perspective in families not only help the family identify resources for coping, but also help them use existing strengths to sustain hope and a sense of purpose by setting and achieving goals in line with their personal aspirations, capabilities, and visions of a possible life. In summary, this practice framework covers the entirety of every aspect in a child or young people's life. Thus, it is essential to bring about the holistic social development of these young members of our community.